Hey guys, tonight we're going underground, not in a metaphorical, moody poetry sense. I mean actually under the streets of Paris, down where the city forgets to be glamorous, where the air is cold and wet, and where tens of thousands of cheeses sit quietly on wooden shelves, aging, fermenting, and plotting their next olfactory assault. Welcome to the cheese caves. It's late. The cobbled streets above are glistening after a soft rain. The Eiffel Tower is flickering politely in the distance, and you're walking with no real purpose, just letting your steps echo through sleepy side alleys. Paris has this way of making even aimless wandering feel poetic. But as you pass a perfectly innocent-looking bakery, you pause, because just behind it, hidden behind a half-graffitied iron gate, is an old delivery chute. Most people wouldn't look twice, but tonight you do. You step closer, feel the breath of cool air rising from below, and here, is that the faint wheeze of an industrial fan? Yeah, you've just found your way into one of the city's strangest secrets. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your city and local time in the comments. I love knowing where in the world you're drifting off from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You duck into the chute. It's cramped and smells faintly of old stone and something that could either be mushroom or damp cardboard. A short crawl later, you drop into a larger tunnel. It's just tall enough to stand upright if you slouch a bit and try not to think about what's skittering behind you. The walls are limestone, cream-colored and streaked with centuries of moisture, dirt, and possibly a little melted camembert. Paris is famously built on stone, and much of that stone came from beneath itself. Quarrying began here as early as Roman times, with medieval expansion pushing ever deeper. This maze of tunnels, called the carrieres, was eventually reinforced and repurposed, but not always labeled. Some of it became ossuaries, some became sewers, and curiously, some became cheese cellars. You step over a rusty pipe, your hand brushing against a wooden beam, clearly marked with chalk. There's a faint clink ahead, like metal tapping wood. As you round the corner, a soft orange glow illuminates a long room. Shelves, hundreds of them, each packed edge to edge with wheels of cheese, round, dusty, slightly hairy, in that way only cheese can be. And here's the kicker. Nobody above ground really talks about this. Oh, sure, you'll hear vague references to cheese maturing facilities or affinage zones, but the reality is more surreal. Entire sections of Paris are quietly fermenting beneath your feet. Grocery stores, parks, even parts of the Louvre sit directly above what might be the single smelliest square footage in Europe. Fun side note, one of these aging tunnels runs directly under a perfume boutique. So above, you've got Chanel No. 5. Below, Epoisses, known as the cheese so pungent it's banned on public transport. Paris really is a city of contrasts. The temperature here stays pretty consistent year-round, hovering around 11 to 13 degrees Celsius, 52 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit, with humidity levels that would make your average spa jealous. Perfect conditions for slow, deliberate microbial alchemy. The cheese breathes, it sweats, it transforms, and it does so in complete darkness, interrupted only by the occasional visit from the affineur, part scientist, part monk, part mold whisperer. You reach out and gently touch a wheel of tommy. It's cool, slightly sticky, and textured like sandstone. Somewhere deep in its bacterial heart, tiny armies of Brevibacterium linens are working their magic, breaking down proteins, producing aroma compounds, and slowly turning this once rigid dairy product into a creamy, oozing miracle. Above ground, a waiter pours wine. A tourist snaps a selfie. A Vespa buzzes past, trailing perfume and cigarette smoke. But down here, time moves differently. You could sit cross-legged beside a wheel of Comte for 6 months, and no one would ever know. And there's something oddly soothing about that. The idea that beneath one of the world's busiest cities, in complete stillness, cheese is doing its slow, smelly work. No rush, no fanfare, just microbial patience. It's not all pleasant, though. The air down here can be overwhelming. Not just from the cheese, but from the ancient stone itself. It holds centuries of odor, a mixture of damp plaster, wet boots, stale yeast, and something that might be ammonia. It's the sort of place where your nose gives up halfway through and just decides this is normal now. Still, you wander deeper. Some shelves are stacked neatly, almost militarily organized. Others are chaos. Cheeses lopsided, leaking, slowly colonizing the wood they sit on. Labels are handwritten, some in Sharpie, some in fading pencil, others in what looks suspiciously like red lipstick. And scientists still argue about just how essential the cave's environment is to cheese flavor. Is it the specific blend of microbes in Parisian air, the minerals in the stone, or is it just an elaborate tradition that persists because it smells like nostalgia and sells well to tourists? You duck through another low arch and discover a wheeled cart piled high with cheeses wrapped in cloth. They're sweating slightly. Someone's been here recently, maybe even watching you now. But you're too sleepy to worry. Besides, it's hard to feel threatened in a room that smells like fondue left out in the sun. As you settle onto an old wooden crate and rest your back against a cool limestone wall, you realize you're sitting in one of the city's quietest corners. No cars, no buzz, no social media notifications, just the soft drip of moisture from a ceiling 20 feet above and the slow, ripe breathing of 1,000 cheeses. Not bad for a bedtime story. The silence hums around you as your fingers trace the wall. It's chalky, brittle in places, but it holds an ancient truth beneath its pale, flaky surface. This is Paris limestone, calcaire lutetiens if you're feeling geological. And it's been here long before cheese, or baguettes, or that one time Napoleon declared himself emperor on a Tuesday just for fun. You squint upward at the cavern ceiling. It's low and uneven, not carved with precision but hacked away in overlapping waves. Back in the Lutetian age, about 45 million years ago, this entire region was underwater. Picture a warm, tropical sea, teeming with life. Mollusks, coral, all the usual suspects. As the creatures died, their shells sank, compressing over millennia into creamy limestone. And because nature's a bit of an overachiever, that limestone ended up dense, moisture retentive, and surprisingly good at controlling temperature. So, by pure prehistoric accident, Paris ended up sitting on a gigantic sponge, one that just so happens to be perfect for maturing cheese. You shuffle forward, passing a stack of brie so ripe it's probably sentient. As the path dips slightly, you notice something subtle. This whole corridor was once sloped deliberately, not for cheese, but for carts full of stone. The same rock that now lines Haussmann's boulevards and holds up Notre Dame came from down here. The miners left behind a sprawling honeycomb of catacombs and quarry tunnels, which centuries later would become this shadowy, sacred space for Derry. Above you, there's a bakery in the 5th arrondissement, built entirely from this stone. Its croissants are just okay, but its foundation is fossil-rich and older than primates. Fun fact: some limestone blocks used in Paris contain visible marine fossils. So next time you're eating a croissant in a charming old cafe, take a moment to appreciate the ancient sea creature buried in the wall behind your head. The tunnel ahead narrows. You duck, only slightly, and step into a chamber lined with wine racks, except instead of bottles, it's all Tommy wheels. Huge, gray-crusted wheels stacked like tires in a medieval garage. A faint hiss escapes one of them. Probably gas release. Hopefully gas release. Scientists still argue about whether the microflora in these caves is unique to Paris or just a happy accident of centuries of cheese exposure. Some say it's evolved from the foot bacteria of generations of workers. Others say it's the limestone itself, soaked in centuries of fermentation and sweat. Either way, you're breathing in a living cloud of airborne cheese essence. Congratulations. You pause and sit again, legs crossed, facing a wall of Crottin de Chavignon, a tiny goat cheese that starts firm and dry, then shrinks and grows stronger with age. Think of it as the espresso shot of the cheese world. Small, punchy, and liable to make your eyes water. Now, here's the fringe tidbit. In the 19th century, some people believed that these limestone caves had curative powers, not just for cheese, but for humans. Workers would take their sick relatives down into the cooler air, claiming it soothed breathing issues and purged city poisons. They weren't entirely wrong. The air down here is less polluted and high in humidity, but it's also full of mold spores and probably a bit of ammonia, so not exactly a spa day. You run your fingers along the shelves. Most of the cheeses are labeled, though a few have faded tags, cryptic initials, dates from decades ago. Even a cartoon cow drawn in wax pencil. One is marked simply 1987, do not touch. So naturally you do touch it. It's hard as marble, smells like sock confessions, and gives off the quiet confidence of a cheese that's seen things. Back in the day, transporting cheese was tricky. Before refrigeration, affineurs had to think creatively. Caves like this one were often connected by underground passageways that stretched for miles. These weren't mapped in your average city planner's file cabinet. They were passed along through nods, handshakes, and the occasional scandal. One such tunnel, now sealed supposedly, ran under the Seine and allowed dairy goods to be moved from the left bank to the right without ever seeing daylight. And because this is Paris, there were, of course, disputes. One mayor allegedly accused a rival of siphoning the best stinkers out from under him via tunnel access. Imagine losing an election because your brie supply got hijacked. You stand again and keep walking. Your footsteps echo now, dull and padded against the old clay floor. It's easy to forget the world above. The scooters, the overpriced coffee, the influencer trying to take the perfect macaron photo in Marais. Down here, all that fades into soft rock and fermenting air. The Paris Metro, by the way, occasionally runs above these caves, not always safely. In 1961, a maintenance crew accidentally drilled into a forgotten cheese corridor. The smell caused 3 workers to abandon the site mid-shift, believing they'd hit a sewage line, Nope, just a very aged Saint-Nectaire. It's around this moment that you start to feel your own body slowing down. Maybe it's the cool temperature. Maybe it's the lack of light. Or maybe your brain is just giving up in the face of overwhelming funk. Either way, you stop caring. You nestle down against a barrel marked Munster Private and breathe in the sleepiest, stinkiest air Paris has to offer. Above, the city blinks on into evening. But here, deep in the belly of old stone and older cheese, the night has already begun. The tunnel ahead darkens. Not because the light has changed, there's barely any to begin with, but because the air thickens. It's heavier here, warmer too. You wipe a damp patch from your brow with your sleeve and push forward, deeper into the belly of Paris, where the city's past and present ferment quietly side by side. The floor changes texture underfoot. Gravel gives way to worn flagstones, slippery with time and damp with centuries of moisture. You're in a new zone now, less cave, more corridor. Not natural, not entirely industrial. This is a converted quarry tunnel, and it's got a very different story to tell. Back in the 1700s, Paris was growing rapidly. So rapidly, in fact, that no one thought too hard about what was under their feet. People built homes, boulevards, and palaces right over old stone quarries. Surprise! The ground began to collapse. Streets caved in. Basements vanished. Horses fell into the earth mid-trot. It was a whole thing. So in 1777, King Louis XVI commissioned the Inspection Générale des Carrières, a team of engineers tasked with mapping and reinforcing the old quarry network. Their work saved the city, but it also revealed something peculiar. Many of the tunnels were naturally cool, stable, and utterly perfect for aging cheese. Naturally, a few enterprising affineurs saw an opportunity, and thus the transition began. Quarry by quarry, cheese moved in. You move through a long, rectangular tunnel lined with beams, supporting not just the ceiling, but racks of tightly packed wheels of cheese. Some are crusted over with a white, powdery rind. Others glisten faintly in the flickering lamplight, almost sweaty. One or two are wrapped in cloth, yellowing at the edges like antique bandages. They didn't just store any cheese down here. These caves were primarily used for the types that needed to age. Soft-rind bries, robust blue veins, and the notorious washed-rind monsters that could empty a room if unwrapped in the wrong weather. Parisian affineurs were picky. They knew that aging wasn't just waiting, it was alchemy. And then came the fun part, secrecy. You see, not all of these tunnels were officially sanctioned. Some sections of the quarry system were mapped and reinforced. Others were, let's say, overlooked, which meant certain cheesemongers began using unauthorized passages to age their stock. Cheeses aged in the black caves were rumored to have a richer funk, a stronger bloom, a sort of rebellious spirit that you could taste. It became a badge of honor. If you knew someone who had cheese from below the maps, you pass a door, iron, heavy, bolted shut. It's got a number scrawled on it in chalk, 1842. Probably a storage vault, possibly cursed. Definitely smells like Limburger. There's a mainstream fact for you. During World War I, parts of these underground caves were used to store not just cheese, but meat and wine, all in an effort to avoid shortages above ground. The tunnels became impromptu pantries, gloomy, musty, and probably the only part of the war effort that consistently smelled like foot. Keep walking. You're not alone, by the way. You haven't seen anyone, but you feel them. Affineurs still walk these tunnels. Not many, maybe 2 or 3 for every kilometer of cave, but they're there. Rubber boots, canvas aprons, headlamps. People who treat mold like a close friend and bacteria like an art director. Scientists still argue about what makes a truly great affinage environment. Is it the precise humidity level? The microbial cross-contamination from wheel to wheel? The way the airflow curls around rough limestone? Some claim that modern refrigeration and lab controls can replicate it all. Others scoff, claiming you can't fake the history, the ghosts, the sweat soaked into these walls. You duck again, entering a small chamber. It's round, like the inside of a silo, and stacked floor to ceiling with wooden planks. Each one holds cheeses that look less like food and more like ancient artifacts. Orange, gray, almost greenish in parts. You spot one with a rind like crocodile skin. Another looks like it was dug out of a tomb. And here's the quirky part. Some of these cheeses have names, not types. Names, personal ones. Maurice, Giselle, Therese the Third. It's part joke, part tracking system. Affineurs will sometimes name a particularly unique wheel and monitor its progress as if raising a pet. Ah, Maurice is blooming nicely this month, they'll say with unsettling affection. Your hand grazes a wheel labeled simply, Jambone 5. Do not move. Of course, you immediately nudge it. It doesn't react. Probably for the best. This corridor once connected several key points of trade. The old markets of Les Halles, the wine warehouses along the Seine, and multiple underground ice storage rooms from before refrigeration. It became, quite unintentionally, a literal cheese highway. Carts trundled through here at all hours, sometimes powered by hand, sometimes pulled by donkeys wearing leather blinders, and probably deeply confused about their career trajectory. You imagine being down here in the 1800s. The tunnels lit only by oil lamps, echoes of wheels clacking. Somewhere in the dark, a man humming as he brushes mold from a cheese with a horsehair brush. Not creepy at all. Paris above was busy with revolutions, royalty, and remarkable hats. But beneath the chaos, cheese flowed in silence, sheltered by stone, forgotten by most. You lean against the wall. It's cooler now. The air shifts with a slight breeze, perhaps from a forgotten vent, or maybe just the slow exhale of the cheeses themselves. You take another breath, and the smell no longer shocks. It's almost comforting now. Fungal, nutty, alive. Up ahead, something glows faintly behind a wooden slat. You approach it without urgency. Your feet are slow, your limbs heavy. The tunnel cradles your movement like warm water. Behind the slat, more shelves. But these are different. These are newer, stainless steel, clinical. You've reached a modern annex. The contrast is startling. After hours of walking through crumbly stone and cobwebbed beams, this part feels sterile, almost hospital-like. Still, the cheese is here too. Same molds, same slow blooming process, just shinier shelving, and somehow less romantic. You back away. Let's leave the chrome wheels to the newbies. The real magic is back there, in the dust, the dark, the secret cracks in the city's belly. You turn, the smell returns, and with it, a warm, drowsy calm. You shuffle back from the sterile gleam of the steel shelving, returning to the comforting gloom of the stone corridors. There's something unspoken down here, something the brushed aluminum and temperature-controlled chambers just don't capture. Maybe it's the mold-slicked floor. Maybe it's the smell of quiet defiance. Or maybe it's just the simple truth that some things, like cheese, don't want to be modern. The path ahead dips gently. You follow it instinctively, feet skimming over uneven stone, guided now by little more than memory and scent. The ceiling arches low, the walls narrowing, and then, just like that, it opens again. This time, into a long, echoing tunnel, straight, purposeful. Unlike the other twisting quarry offshoots, this one feels designed, engineered. You've stumbled onto what old affineurs called the fromage rapid, the underground cheese highway. It's not on any tourist map, but for years, this corridor was a vital artery, stretching from the Montparnasse district in the south to the old Les Halles market in central Paris. It once served as a quiet passage for cheese, butter, and cured meats. Above, the city bustled with traffic, protests, and parades. Below, the stink rolled quietly on wooden carts. Imagine it. Workers pushing creaky trolleys loaded with heavy wheels, lanterns swinging gently as they pass. The corridor walls echoing with the slap of rubber boots and the distant clink of metal on stone. Some carts were pushed by hand. Others were fitted with pulley systems, ropes, and rails. This wasn't an official transit line. It was pure, moldy improvisation. You run your hand along the wall as you walk. Every few meters, you spot faded marks, arrows, initials, chalked messages in indecipherable slang. Some are scratched directly into the stone. RF 1916, Ne pas ouvrir, G2 plus. Secretive, cryptic, like a treasure map drawn by someone who really, really loved dairy. A little deeper in, you find something unexpected. An old bicycle. Rusted, cobwebbed, still upright. Its back wheel is connected to a pulley that once helped haul crates up a slope. There's even a moldy leather satchel hanging from the handlebars. You don't open it. Some mysteries are better left cheesy. Fun fact, the total length of underground tunnels in Paris is estimated to be over 300 kilometers. Not all of that is Cheese Cave, of course. Some of it is catacombs, abandoned metro lines, sewer systems, and ventilation shafts. But scattered within that maze are pockets, little sanctuaries, where cheese once moved, and in some cases, still does. Scientists still argue about whether this kind of subterranean transport had any impact on flavor. Did the vibration of the wheels alter the molecular structure? Did the fluctuating air pressure between corridors affect the rind? Or was it just a romantic myth spun by affineurs who knew the value of mystery? Your flashlight flickers briefly. Batteries? Spirits? You tap it twice, and the beam steadies. Just in time, too, because ahead there's a junction. 3 paths, left, right, and straight. The walls are darker here, water-streaked. There's a sign hanging crookedly from an iron bracket. The lettering has faded almost entirely, but you make out one word. Vin. Wine. Of course. The cheese highway wasn't traveling solo. Wine merchants use these tunnels too. Aging barrels of Bordeaux in side vaults. Sometimes right alongside wheels of Roquefort. The two matured together, breathing the same humid air, absorbing the same subterranean whispers. A wine and cheese pairing born literally from the same cave. You take the left fork, drawn by a scent that's changed, less sharp now, more earthy. The tunnel here is lower. The floor is damp. puddled in places, and your steps splash quietly as you pass another room. This one empty, except for old wooden pallets and a forgotten wheel of cheese growing a remarkable beard of green mold. It looks like it's plotting something. One fringe fact: some sections of these underground networks were used by smugglers, not just of food, but of people, weapons, and forbidden books. During both world wars, resistance fighters used the old cheese corridors to move silently beneath checkpoints, ferrying supplies hidden under wheels of dairy that reeked too strongly for guards to inspect. You stop beside a wooden door, half rotted and swollen with age. It's slightly ajar. Inside, more cheese, but not the refined stacks you've seen before. This is messier, older. Some wheels have collapsed into themselves. Others are growing tendrils. You inhale, and your nose gets hit with a cocktail of ammonia, damp wood, and yes, a hint of toasted nuts. This section was probably abandoned years ago. A shift in regulations, maybe, or a collapse risk. Paris doesn't talk much about these forgotten zones, because officially, they're not supposed to be here. But the cheese doesn't care. It keeps aging, slowly, faithfully. The tunnel narrows again. You walk in silence, passing iron hooks embedded in the stone, once used for hanging meats or holding lanterns. One still has a rope tied to it, frayed, useless, suspiciously theatrical. You wonder how many people walk this very corridor. How many Affiners made their nightly rounds here, lantern in one hand, a chunk of cheese in the other, whistling through their teeth because the acoustics are weirdly excellent. Above, the city is shifting into morning. Taxis honk, garbage trucks roar, croissants burn slightly in ovens that open too early. But none of that touches this place. Down here, the rhythm never changes. Cool, damp, moldy, patient. You reach the end of the corridor. A stone stairwell leads upward, worn into a gentle spiral by centuries of boots. You ascend slowly, the steps moist, your hand trailing the curved wall. At the top, a door, bolted from the inside. You smile. You're not leaving yet. There's more cheese to meet. You linger at the top of the stone staircase, your hand resting on the cool bolt of the door, but you don't slide it open. Something pulls you back, an almost magnetic tug of curiosity and cheese. You turn slowly and descend again, your footsteps echoing like soft applause in the empty tunnel. There's more to see, more to smell, and maybe, if you're lucky, more secrets fermenting in the dark. The corridor you take now veers off at a sharp angle, the walls narrowing, the ceiling dipping low enough that you have to stoop. It's quiet, still, the kind of silence that makes your ears ring slightly. But then, faintly you hear it, scratching. Not mice, not rats, something more bureaucratic. You round a corner and enter a long, narrow chamber filled with shelving, filing cabinets, and old ledgers stacked 3 deep. Cheese caves, yes, but this one's different. This was an inventory room, and its dusty, leather-bound books don't record just cheeses. They list clients, deliveries, dates, special orders. You slide open one drawer. Inside, a waxy piece of parchment labeled Louis Philippe, Roquefort, 4 wheels, 1838. Royal cheese orders. You're in what used to be a supply cache for the Maison du Roi, the king's household. The French monarchy, as it turns out, took its cheese very seriously. During the 18th and 19th centuries, these underground rooms supplied palaces with dairy goods stored far away from sunlight, vermin, and revolutionaries. Royal banquets would feature wheels aged in secret, delivered by trusted carriers who knew these tunnels like the back of their mold-smeared hands. And here's where it gets weirder. During World War II, some of these very same vaults were repurposed by the French resistance. That's right. The same walls that once housed camembert for kings were later used to store weapons, ration supplies, and occasionally people. You imagine the scene. A resistance fighter crouched beside a stack of Saint Marcellin, using the cheese as cover while listening for German boots overhead. There's something oddly poetic about that. Hiding liberty among fermentation. Scientists still argue about the air quality during this period. Some believe that long-term storage in these spaces altered not just the cheese, but the weaponry. Metal corroded faster, ammunition warped. Others dismiss it as folklore, tales told by sleepy historians overly fond of brie. There's a passage ahead, blocked by collapsed stone, but you can just peek through the crack. Beyond, crates lie tumbled, some broken open, revealing waxed cheeses still holding shape despite the years. Cheese doesn't live forever, but in these conditions, it can fake immortality impressively well. You pass a wall lined with old posters, water-damaged and curled at the corners. One depicts a strong-jawed man holding a wedge of cheese like a torch. The slogan reads, Fromage fort, France forte. Cheese strong, France strong. It's not subtle. In the dim corner of this room is a small wooden bench. You sit, exhaling slowly. The air down here has layers. First, the ammonia, then the sweetness, then something underneath it all, something faintly metallic, like a coin held in your mouth. It's the smell of age, of time compacted into edible geology. A crate nearby is labeled Normandy, top secret. Of course it is. You crack it open with both caution and mischief. Inside, cheese. Specifically, wheels wrapped in wax cloth, bound with twine. Each has a small tag with initials and dates ranging from the 1941 to 1944. Wartime cheese aged in silence. Some might have been intended for the black market. Others could have been bribes traded in smoky backrooms for favors, documents, or safe passage. Here's your quirky tidbit. During World War II, cheese was occasionally used as currency. In parts of rural France, wheels of particularly pungent varieties were more valuable than gold, especially when laced with meat, wine, or strong tobacco. Cheese could buy you shelter, silence, or a seat on the last truck out of town. You pick up one of the wheels. It hums faintly in your hand, not literally, but energetically, like it knows something. Maybe it remembers. You don't eat it. Probably for the best. You rise and move back into the corridor. This time, the tunnel feels warmer. There's a faint vibration in the floor, a subtle, rhythmic thrum. You're close to a metro line. Above, Parisians sip coffee, check watches, and tap their feet impatiently on a platform just meters above you. They have no idea that beneath their souls lies a cache of wartime cheese and royal secrets. You press on. The corridor widens into a grand chamber with a vaulted ceiling. This was once a banquet vault, an underground space for clandestine dinners during occupation periods. The walls are blackened with old soot. Hooks hang from the ceiling, and long wooden tables, scarred, cracked, and wine-stained, still stand in the center. It's beautiful, in a post-apocalyptic bistro kind of way. You imagine it. Candles lit, wine uncorked, resistance operatives breaking bread, and cheese while whispering plans in the dark. Food has always been a kind of protest. And down here, every bite of Roquefort was an act of rebellion. You spot a dusty wine bottle still standing upright. The label has rotted away, but it's corked, intact. Next to it, a cheese knife stuck firmly into a wheel long since petrified. You wonder if the meal was interrupted, or if they simply left, full and hopeful, into the shadows. You take a breath. Deep, steady, laced with mold and memory. You're starting to understand the caves, not just as a quirky underground pantry, but as a palimpsest of Parisian identity. Royal decadence, wartime secrecy, quiet resistance, and everyday sustenance, all layered like rind upon rind. The air grows still again. Your heartbeat slows. You're not walking anymore. You're gliding, as if the cheese itself is carrying you through its history, one gentle whiff at a time. Somewhere behind you, a wheel creaks on its shelf, just settling. The air down here has changed again. It's cooler now, wetter, like the inside of a cave that forgot it used to be a sea. You follow the moisture, your steps echoing a little louder than before. And soon, the walls begin to sweat. Not metaphorically, actually sweating. Thin beads of condensation trace down the limestone, forming a slick shine that catches the pale orange glow of a rusted industrial bulb overhead. You've wandered into the ripest part of the caves, the area known by affineurs as La Chambre Vivante, or the living room. Not because it's cozy, no one naps here, but because the cheese is alive, and this is where it truly starts to show it. Before you is a forest of wooden shelving, floor to ceiling, packed with soft rind cheeses, bries, camemberts, coulommiers. Their bloomy white rinds puff out slightly like snow-dusted pillows, delicate and threatening. The air smells like wet hay and gym socks, with just a twist of mushroom funk. And it's here, right here, that the microbial ballet begins. You lean close to one of the wheels. There's movement. Not visible, not gross, just evolution. Minute by minute, these cheeses are transforming. Proteins breaking down, fats restructuring, surface molds blooming like microscopic fireworks. Every wheel is a microcosm, a miniature edible planet in its own orbit of decay. Meet the cast. Penicillium camemberti, the white mold that gives soft cheeses their signature fuzzy coat. Geotrichum candidum, which helps break down proteins and mellow out ammonia levels. Brevibacterium linens, the bacteria responsible for that intense foot smell that's oddly comforting after a while, like a dog blanket you refuse to wash because it reminds you of childhood. Scientists still argue about which strain is responsible for the strongest flavor development. Some say it's the white molds. Others swear it's the yeasts that colonize the rind first and set the tone for everyone else. There's even debate about whether the order of flipping a cheese wheel, top to bottom versus side to side, alters the microbial colony's direction of growth. You glance around. Dozens, maybe hundreds of cheeses are in various stages of transformation. Some are smooth and dewy. Others are collapsing inward, their rinds struggling to contain the molten goo inside. One or two look like they've been forgotten for too long, cracked, brown at the edges, but somehow still proud. You bend down and sniff one directly. Bad idea. Instantly, you get hit with a wave of ammonia so strong, your eyes water and your brain briefly forgets the word Tuesday. You stagger back, blinking, coughing softly. That one's ready. And that's the thing. Cheese doesn't age uniformly. It doesn't come with a countdown timer. It takes a trained eye, a practiced nose, and more than a little emotional intuition to to know when a wheel has reached peak flavor. Affineurs don't just look, they touch, they press, they thump, sniff, listen, sometimes even whisper to the cheese like a sleep-deprived horse trainer, and the cheese listens. You walk past an affineur's toolkit left on a crate, a long-handled brush, a pH meter, a curiously damp rag, and a bottle of saltwater solution used to wash the rinds of more pungent varieties. There's a crumpled notebook nearby with scribbles like B4, slumping too soon, and Gaston's batch, creamy, save for comp. Who's Gaston? Probably the cheese, or the guy. Honestly, could be either. Here's your quirky fact of the hour. Some affineurs name their microbial cultures, not scientifically, emotionally. One starter culture might be called Babette, another Chonky Jean. They talk about them like exes they're still on speaking terms with. Jean was temperamental, but when he worked, he worked. As you make your way around the room, you notice that some wheels are tied with little colored strings. Blue, red, yellow. It's not festive, it's a code. Blue means high-fat content. Red means faster aging. Yellow? That's for experimental. Cheeses left to the whims of time, gravity, and the gods of dairy. Above you, the sound of dripping water returns, a steady, rhythmic pat. Somewhere, a condensation pipe is slowly giving up, but no one repairs it. The humidity here is perfect. Why mess with success? There's something calming about the repetition. Row after row, shelf after shelf, all dedicated to this slow transformation. Cheese doesn't hurry. It doesn't panic. It ages the way a forest does, silently, insistently, according to its own biological schedule. You take a seat on an overturned crate, your back pressed to the cool stone. In front of you, a wheel of camembert so ripe its rind has begun to separate like tectonic plates. You stare into the crevasse forming at its center and wonder, not for the first time, if this wheel might have thoughts, dreams, regrets. Cheese is weird like that. You blink slowly, breathing in. The scent no longer offends. It comforts. The ammonia fades, and all that remains is a heady mix of butter, soil, and something ancient, not dead, dormant, patient. Scientists still argue about whether cheese made in the exact same conditions today can replicate the depth of flavor found in these older caves. Some say no, citing modern milk processing and stricter sanitation. Others argue yes, claiming microbes are adaptable storytellers, just waiting for the right limestone stage to perform. You let your eyes drift shut, if only for a moment. The cave breathes. The cheese matures. Somewhere behind you, a wheel creaks ever so slightly. You don't turn. You just listen. You stir from your near nap against the stone wall, blinking slowly as your eyes adjust to the cavern's half-light once more. The silence hums. The cheese breathes. And now, you're starting to feel its story unfold like the rind of an overripe camembert. Soft, warm, and just a little rebellious around the edges. You rise to your feet and follow the corridor deeper. This next chamber feels different. The cheese here is fewer in number, arranged with strange care. Each wheel spaced out deliberately, as if they're being kept at a polite distance from each other. The air has changed again. Less ammonia. More vinegar? Astringent, intense. It's like sniffing the inside of a well-used shoe that once took a tour of Burgundy. You've stumbled into one of the most controversial areas in the Paris cheese caves, the political rind zone. This is where cheese gets emotional. Because as much as cheese is a matter of taste, in France it's also a matter of national identity, pride, and, on occasion, open defiance. These wheels, they're not just food, they're edible arguments. Take reblochon, for example. Smooth, rich, smear-ripened and banned in several countries for its raw milk origins. The EU has tried multiple times to tighten rules on cheese production. Pasteurization requirements, humidity regulations, mold classifications. But in France, cheesemakers have resisted with flair. One affineur famously hung a sign in his cave that read, "You can pry my rinds from my cold, smelly hands." You pass a wheel wrapped in linen and tucked into a wooden box, labeled only with the letters CFD, not a variety you recognize. You squat beside it and peel back the corner of the cloth. Underneath is a creamy, orange, smear rind cheese that smells like the combined effort of an armpit and a bottle of Chardonnay. You smile. It's illegal, at least in 3 countries. And that's the thing. Not all cheese is legal. Some cheeses, especially those made from raw milk and aged in traditional cave environments like this, are restricted or outright banned for export. Others are sold only in backroom markets, passed hand to hand in wax paper like contraband. The cheese you're staring at, it might have crossed a border in someone's suitcase, wrapped in socks, declared as bath salts. Scientists still argue about whether these raw milk cheeses pose real danger. One camp says the bacteria are risky. The other says the bacteria are the point, essential to developing flavor, aroma, even texture. It's an age-old fight, safety versus soul. You stand and move deeper into the room, where a small wooden table holds several sample knives, a crusty cutting board, and an open notebook labeled affinage notes, resistance batches. The pages list names of cheeses that were once hidden during wartime, fermented in defiance of rationing laws, taxation, or simply because someone believed that no occupying force should ever get their hands on their brie. One quirky tidbit: during the German occupation, certain families would bury their cheese in underground bread ovens to protect it from seizure. In at least one case, the cheese kept fermenting underground until it literally burst out of the soil and startled a dog, who barked until the neighbors discovered it. The cheese was eaten that night in secret, toasted on crusty baguettes, celebrated like a miracle. You walk past a dusty shelf labeled "Garde Fermée," closed guard. These are cheeses that were produced in micro batches by rogue affineurs who refuse to register their production. It's the dairy equivalent of moonshine. Some of these wheels have barely legible stamps. Others bear no marks at all, like feral animals escaped from paperwork. You squat beside one particular wheel, massive, cracked, its rind crusted with ash. You touch it gently. It leaves a powdery film on your fingers. It smells like garlic, sweat, and the sort of daring that gets you banned from polite company. A label nearby reads, "CE fromage, ne négocie pas." This cheese doesn't negotiate. You chuckle. Even in the quiet of the caves, the French passion for individuality hums through the walls. Cheese here isn't passive. It's political. It's poetic. It's a statement dressed in mold. You move to a side chamber where another mystery awaits. This one holds only 6 wheels, each encased in thick wax and stacked carefully inside cedar boxes. They look important. Not royal exactly, but protected. There's a tag with a warning in red ink: "Not for sale. Sacred stock." Beneath that, Monsieur Bouchard, 1989. You sit cross-legged before them, and you imagine what these cheeses have seen. They've outlived governments, endured metro strikes, watched as the internet rose, and tried to turn cheese into content. They didn't care. They just aged. Quietly. Confidently. And here's the kicker. No one really knows what to do with them now. These sacred wheels, these outlaw batches, these politically incorrect stink bombs, they exist in a sort of legal and culinary limbo. Too valuable to discard, too dangerous to sell, too beloved to ignore. Scientists still argue about whether cave-aged illegal cheese represents a public health hazard or a gastronomic treasure. Some want tighter controls. Others argue for protection, like a UNESCO site, but smellier. You lean back and close your eyes again. The room feels warmer now, infused with decades of silent protest and soft-rind dreams. Up above, tourists sip espresso and think they're tasting Paris. They're not. Not yet. This place, this cave, this defiant bacterial dance is the real flavor of the city. You stretch your arms slowly, spine creaking almost as much as the wooden shelves lining this next tunnel. The air feels closer here, warmer, thicker, not suffocating, just intimate, just like the breath of an old cellar after you've disturbed its slumber. You've entered one of the most sacred and oddly hypnotic places in the cheese caves, the affineur's workspace. There's no official sign, no blinking lights or dramatic archways, just a subtle shift in temperature, a sudden order to the shelving, and that unmistakable scent. Ripe, washed rind cheeses mingling with damp cloth and the faintest hint of bleach. This is where the real work happens. The care of the cheese, the daily rituals, the mold whispering, the bacteria coaxing. You spot the tools first, laid out neatly on a stone bench like a surgeon's tray. Brushes made of horsehair and stiff bristle, thin wooden paddles for flipping soft cheeses, wire cutters, scales, a digital thermometer stuck in a wheel of something orange and semi-collapsed, and next to it all, a notebook, dog-eared and spotted with cheese oil, its pages crammed with half-legible handwriting and strange abbreviations like Sir 1 Flip 3X SM Melt, and Pod B2 Wash, brine plus patience. An affineur appears, not dramatically, not suddenly, just exists at the edge of your peripheral vision. Middle-aged, silent, focused. They wear rubber boots and a stained apron, and they move with the quiet intensity of someone who has deep respect for rot. You don't say anything. You don't need to. You watch as they approach a wheel of liverote, already glistening under its washed rind. They lift it gently, as if handling a baby goat or an important antique, and place it on a wooden board. Then, with a practiced rhythm, they dip a brush into a shallow metal bowl filled with brine and delicately scrub the rind, not harshly, not fast. Just enough to awaken the bacteria and encourage that deep, yeasty funk that liverote is so loved and feared for. This process, called affinage, is the heart of cheese aging. And it's not glamorous. It's wet, repetitive, and often thankless. But without it, cheese would never become more than a lump of curd with potential. Scientists still argue about how much of the flavor in aged cheeses comes from the milk versus the environment versus the affineur's hand. Some argue it's 90% microbes and luck. Others say the affineur is everything, the guardian, the composer, the guide through weeks or months of transformation. You watch as another wheel is flipped, this one a compte, firm, and heavy, with a rind like tanned leather. The affineur sniffs it deeply, not flinching. You try to imitate them, inhaling gently near a similar wheel, and instantly regret it. Your nostrils flare, your eyes sting slightly, and somewhere deep in your brain, a little voice says, "That was too much honesty for one breath." They make it look effortless, graceful, almost meditative. Here is a fun side fact. Many affineurs claim to dream in cheese. Not about it, in it. They report dreams where they're inside wheels, or walking through fields of brie, or navigating rivers of melted raclette. One legendary affineur in Lyon claimed that his dreams helped him decide which wheels needed more humidity. Was he joking? Possibly. But the cheese he made won national awards for 6 years straight. You trail behind as the affineur moves methodically from shelf to shelf, brushing here, flipping there, logging notes in their tattered journal. Each cheese gets attention. None are ignored. The stinky and the subtle, the experimental and the classic, they're all part of the same slow ballet. And then, without a word, they vanish again, absorbed by the labyrinth of tunnels like a ghost whose job is done. You sit down on an overturned crate and breathe deeply. The room hums. There's a rhythm to this place that's not time as you know it. It's not hours or minutes, it's ripeness. It's the slow pulse of fermentation, the steady evolution of scent, taste, and texture, guided by a gentle, moldy hand. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some caves play music to their cheeses. Seriously. A few experimental affineurs believe that certain sound frequencies can encourage better microbial growth. Mozart for brie, jazz for reblochon. One famously tried heavy metal and produced a blue cheese so intense it was reportedly used to evacuate a wedding. Unconfirmed, but delightful. You begin to notice something beautiful in the way the shelves are arranged, not just in straight lines, but in arcs and curves, like a gallery. Some shelves are staggered to let air circulate. Others are tucked into cool nooks where the most delicate cheeses can nap without disturbance. Each wheel has a little space, a little respect. At your feet, a scrap of chalk reads, "Cave est morale." The cave is moral. You chuckle. Maybe it is. Because down here, everything matters. The brushing, the flipping, the silence. It's not about production speed or mass market appeal. It's about care, about trust. You have to trust the cave to do its part. And the cave has to trust you not to mess it up. Scientists still argue about whether affineurs have truly mastered the caves or if they're still learning, still adapting. The truth probably lies somewhere between the brushes and the boots. You sit a little longer, watching the condensation gather on a wheel of tombe that's been aging for almost a year. It's nearly ready. You can feel it. There's a kind of peace here that you won't find in any cafe above, no matter how many Michelin stars it claims. No chatter, no espresso machines, no traffic. Just the slow, deliberate rhythm of microbial transformation and the quiet devotion of people who believe in edible patience. The affineur returns for a moment, lays a cloth gently over a cheese you hadn't noticed, and disappears again. That wheel is sleeping. And now maybe so are you. You blink yourself back to full consciousness, just in time to realize something's different. The tunnel's colder now. Not cave cool, but hospital cold. Sterile. You take a few cautious steps forward, and immediately the air shifts. You know this smell. Oh, you definitely know this smell. It's not just cheese anymore. It's defiance. You've wandered into the forbidden zone. Welcome to the outlaw caves, where the wheels are unregistered, the bacteria unregulated, and the molds have more personality than half the restaurant critics in Montmartre. These cheeses aren't part of the legal system. They're the dairy world's dark web. And you weren't really supposed to find this place. You pause at the threshold. There's no sign, no guard, no lock, just a low, narrow archway that feels secretive. Past it, the lighting is different, red tinted, like a dark room. You step in anyway, because of course you do. Your curiosity is stronger than your nose at this point. Inside, the room stretches wide and low, filled with shelves that are less organized and more improvised. Wooden crates, old wine racks, even a couple of doors laid flat and propped on bricks. Every surface is covered with cheese. But not just any cheese. These are the banned, the blacklisted, the bootlegged. You walk past a stack of small, ash-coated wheels, labeled simply O. They smell like burnt onion and singed socks. To your right, a wheel of marbled blue cheese is crumbling under its own microbial rebellion. The tag reads, Blue 69. Do not sample after 10 days. Someone scratched out the 10 and replaced it with a scrawled, maybe never. Here's your mainstream fact. The sale of certain raw milk cheeses aged less than 60 days is illegal in many countries, including the United States. But in France, tradition often trumps bureaucracy, which means affineurs still make and hide wheels that wouldn't survive inspection, even if they might win your heart or knock you unconscious with a sniff. Scientists still argue about the safety of these outlaw cheeses. Some studies suggest they're teeming with life forms your stomach would rather not meet. Others argue that traditional preparation methods actually foster beneficial bacteria that crowd out the bad stuff. So is it dangerous or just misunderstood? You crouch beside a crate marked black brie. The rind is jet black, not from mold, but from being washed in dark beer and left in cold, dust-lined shelves. Its scent is aggressive, like licking a subway handrail while chewing espresso grounds. And yet, you can't stop sniffing. It's weirdly addictive. Like the world's worst idea might also be your new favorite thing. Nearby, a laminated paper hangs on a rusty nail. It lists banned varieties still alive, and it reads more like a hit list than a menu. Tome de chèvre, cru, mold, strain, unreproducible. Munster Noir, over-fermented, banned 1992. Chèvre brûlée, acidic rind caused internal melt. Sang perdu, recalled, then found again. Quirky, tidbit, some cheeses get banned not for their ingredients, but for their effect. A particularly potent batch of Munster Noir once cleared an entire market stall before the vendor even unwrapped it. Another, Sang perdu, was recalled because it refused to stop aging. It kept fermenting beyond its sell-by date, changing flavor every week like a sentient wheel of identity crisis. You lean in close to one of these infamous wheels. Its surface ripples slightly, like it's breathing. Is it breathing? You take a step back. Maybe this one's better admired from a safe distance. There's no affineur here, at least not visibly. These cheeses are self-managed, fermenting by instinct, not oversight. Their shelves are dusty, marked only by odd symbols. Triangles, circles, a strange X with dots around it. Some of the wheels are labeled with poetry instead of names. You read one aloud in a whisper. I was milk in May, pressed in shadow, turned by dusk. Taste me gently. A romantic, probably, or someone who got very high on bacterial fumes. A small door in the back of the room stands ajar. You push it open and find a much smaller space, really just a pocket carved into the rock. Inside, 6 wheels sit alone, under glass domes like a cheese museum. Each is lit by a single soft bulb, giving them the glow of radioactive relics. One is blue-gray with a pink rind. Another is jet black with white veins. A third is the color of saffron and appears to be sweating. Their labels are more like nicknames. Le Requin, melted priest. The divorced cheese, unlawful entry. You whisper to yourself, these probably aren't in the tourist guide. As you turn to leave, you notice a strange device on the wall, a locking safe with a chilled interior visible through fogged glass. Inside, a single cheese, small, wrinkled, wrapped in a wax cloth printed with vines. The tag reads only Original Strain, 1875. And in faint pencil underneath, do not open unless Paris ends. You back away slowly. Whatever that cheese is, it's probably plotting something. Scientists still argue about how long cheese can technically last. Some say a few years, others say decades. But in rare, sealed environments, cheeses have been found intact after more than a century. Not edible, not dead, just waiting. You exit the outlaw vault, your nose overwhelmed, your brain slightly dizzy, your heart genuinely touched. These cheeses weren't just food. They were protest. They were memory. They were the stubborn refusal to let flavor be defined by law. You glance back once, and the smell follows you like a loyal, possibly dangerous friend. The tunnel swallows you again, and you continue on. By now, your sense of smell is less a functioning system and more a blurry memory. Everything down here is rich and fungal and strangely comforting, like you've wrapped your brain in a warm, stinky scarf. But just when you think you've adjusted, the next chamber flips the table completely. Because now comes the science of the smell. You enter a wide vault lit by flickering overhead bulbs, the old industrial kind that buzz faintly, like they're trying to hum along with the molds. In the center of the room stands a long stainless steel table, scattered with odd devices. Gas chromatographs, scent hoods, petri dishes, even what looks suspiciously like a curling iron. And above it all, a chart, giant, yellowed, taped to the wall with corners curling like dried cheese rinds. It's labeled Volatile Organic Compounds in Affinage Environments. Translation: why does cheese smell like this? Let's break it down. Cheese odor doesn't come from one thing. It comes from hundreds of volatile compounds, molecules released as milk proteins and fats break down during aging. Some are delightful, some are terrifying. All are working together in a fragrant orchestra of microbial weirdness. The heavy hitters? Butyric acid smells like vomit but is common in Parmesan. Ammonia, responsible for that sharp sting in washed rind cheeses. Methanethiol, think cabbage and compost. Indole and scatol, the stuff of dirty laundry and very occasionally pigs. But here's the kicker. When combined in the right ratios, these horrifying smells transform into something beautiful. A wheel of époisses might reek like a hockey locker on its own, but pair it with crusty bread and wine, and suddenly it's poetry. You approach a sealed glass chamber with a cheese sample inside. A small pipe sticks out the top, feeding into a scent analyzer. It whirs softly, measuring the aromatic compounds like a sommelier evaluating a haunted house. Next to the chamber, someone has helpfully posted a handwritten guide, Sniff Notes, the Big Five. Floral, from esters and aldehydes. Think alpine cheeses with grassy notes. Nutty, acetoine and diacetyl. Classic in Comte and Gruyere. Earthy, geosmin and pyrazines, goat cheeses, especially cave-aged. Sweaty, sulfur compounds, washed rinds, blues. Foot, yes, actual foot, the domain of bee linens, thriving on salt and love. You chuckle, because there it is again. Brevibacterium linens, the most gloriously misunderstood bacteria in the cave. The same species found on human skin, especially in sweaty areas. It's why your feet sometimes smell like cheese, and your cheese sometimes smells like feet. Coincidence? Absolutely not. Scientists still argue about whether this is evolutionary comedy or microbial efficiency. Some claim it's a form of natural mimicry, that strong-smelling cheeses may have evolved foot-like odors to attract mammals for spore dispersal. Others just shrug and say, well, it works. One table is covered in scent vials, tiny bottles filled with isolated aroma compounds. You pick one up labeled 3-methylbutanol. Take a cautious sniff and instantly regret it. It smells like wet cardboard soaked in garlic and resentment. Another vial? Phenylacetyldehyde. Oddly lovely. Floral. Almost like honeysuckle. Found in certain bloomy rind cheeses. And weirdly, also in chocolate. And that's the magic. Cheese doesn't have just one smell. It's a cocktail. A layered, evolving, deeply personal scent profile that can change day to day, wheel to wheel. You glance at another chalkboard scrawled with phrases like, Roquefort plus oxidation equals sign cucumber. Triple cream, after rain, equals sign mushroom on toast. Does Livero dream in onion gas? You sit on a bench beside a stack of old binders filled with lab notes. One page includes a blind taste test ranking cheeses by how far tasters had to hold them from their nose before recoiling. The winner. A particularly gooey maroilles that cleared a 1-meter radius in under 3 seconds. Here's your quirky tidbit. In 2004, a British study used cheese samples to create artificial human body odor in order to train bomb-sniffing dogs. Not because the dogs were hungry, but because cheese is chemically close to human scent. So, if you've ever thought a cheese smells like your Uncle Gary after tennis, you're not wrong. You're scientifically observant. As you continue exploring the lab, you find a section labeled Folklore and Urban Legends. Someone's clearly had fun with this part. Scribbled pages tell stories of cheeses so stinky they were banished from entire regions. One tale involves a monastery that aged a cheese for 17 years before sealing it in a lead box and burying it behind the altar. Why? Because it kept calling the monks by name. Another legend, a man who claimed to detect which Parisian district a cheese was aged in based solely on scent. He was never wrong. He was also eventually banned from several markets for unsettling the customers. Scientists still argue whether certain Parisian neighborhoods impart their own unique microbiota to aging cheeses. Could a wheel stored beneath Montmartre carry traces of the romance above? Could a cheese aged near the catacombs absorb the mystery of the dead? No conclusive evidence, just pungent speculation. You lean back and close your eyes. The lab hums quietly. The smell, an odd symphony of sulfur and sweetness, rot and renewal. You're starting to understand why people dedicate their lives to this. It's not just food, it's a language, a mood, a form of scent-based archaeology. And as your breathing slows, you swear the room seems warmer, the smells less strange. They're familiar now, like old friends arriving at your subconscious with gifts of funk and fermentation. You let the scent carry you deeper into sleep. Just don't dream of feet. You're beginning to suspect this journey has no real end. Just layers, like the cheeses themselves. Each chamber, each corridor revealing something slightly richer, slightly stranger than the last. This tunnel? It's rougher. The limestone here hasn't been planed smooth or reinforced with beams. You're ducking slightly now, brushing past cables and dripping pipes, and the ground underfoot crunches with gravel and time. But what lies ahead isn't more cheese. It's mushrooms. The smell gives it away first. Earthy, moist, with a whisper of decay. You round a bend and find yourself in a vast chamber, sectioned into neat rows of stacked crates, their contents glowing faintly under the cold blue glare of halogen lamps. You've stepped into one of the many champignonnières, mushroom farms, tucked deep inside the Paris underground. You weren't expecting this. And yet, it fits. Back in the 19th century, Parisians discovered that the same conditions ideal for aging cheese, cool temps, high humidity, undisturbed dark, were perfect for growing mushrooms. So they started doing both. Cheese on one side, mushrooms on the other. Dairy and fungi, an alliance of spores and spores. You walk between crates of Champignons de Paris, the classic white button mushroom. They're growing in long, soil-filled troughs layered with straw and manure. It's less glamorous than cheese, sure, but the smell is oddly calming, earthy, rooted. Here's your mainstream fact. By the 1930s, over 2,000 mushroom farms operated beneath Paris. Many were abandoned post-World War II, but some, like this one, persist. And today, a few are even returning, marketed as organic, sustainable, hyper-local produce. 1 kilometer from farm to fork. How's that for food miles? But the mushrooms are only part of the story here. Because beyond the crates, behind a tarp, pulled half-heartedly across a low doorway, lies something else entirely. You step through and find maps. Old ones, rolled, yellowed, curling at the edges. They cover the walls, lie in stacks, and cling to clipboards bolted to the stone. These aren't tourist maps. They're illegal maps, documents made by cataphiles, the urban explorers who crawl through the Paris underground after dark, charting the forbidden zones the city government refuses to acknowledge. You're in a navigation hub, a secret one. At the far end of the room is a battered table covered in wax-sealed envelopes, half-burned candles, an old rotary phone, disconnected, and a binder labeled Logistique 1957-1982. Inside, you find hand-drawn diagrams of tunnel sections labeled Vieux Fromagers, Charbon Sombre, and, ominously, Cave de l'Oubli, Cave of the Forgotten. You pause. This isn't just cheese history anymore. This is Paris history. The parts no one likes to talk about. The hiding places. The secret stashes. The things that weren't meant to survive, but did. Here's your quirky tidbit. At least one murder plot is known to have been hatched in these tunnels. In 1984, police intercepted a group of art thieves who had used the quarry system to break into a left bank museum. Their entry point, a cheese vault from their cover, delivering mushroom crates. Somewhere nearby, a metal cart sits abandoned. Inside, empty cheese rinds, 2 rubber gloves, and a roll of black duct tape. A joke? A memory? Hard to say. Scientists still argue about whether prolonged exposure to underground environments alters human cognition. Some studies suggest changes in time perception, emotional dampening, even scent-based hallucinations. Others dismiss it as cave fever, a side effect of too much darkness and too little ventilation. You step carefully now, moving through a side corridor where the ground becomes more uneven. There are scorch marks on one wall. Another is covered in chalk graffiti. On mange, on rev, on disparate. We eat, we dream, we disappear. You're not alone here. You know that. Not in a scary way. Not anymore. You pass another room, tiny, brick-lined, with melted candles in the corners and a single empty wine bottle in the middle of the floor. Cheese rinds litter the edge of a broken plate. Someone was here. Recently. Was it a celebration? A meeting? A final meal? You'll never know. But the caves know. They remember. That's their gift and their burden. You duck into one final hallway, low and narrow, and find yourself back in cheese territory. Only now, the wheels are older, more weathered. Their rinds have split. The wood beneath them has warped. Some are collapsing under their own weight. No affineur tends these anymore. These are the forgotten cheeses. Unlabeled, unclaimed. And yet, they persist. One particularly craggy specimen looks like a fossilized brain. Another has fused with the shelf entirely, forming a sort of cheese stone hybrid that will probably be excavated by future archaeologists and debated at great length. You reach out and touch one gently. The rind flakes beneath your fingers. It smells like dust, regret, and blue mold, but also something comforting, familiar, a memory you didn't know you had. This part of the cave isn't curated. It's not commercial. It's not even really for humans anymore. It's just cheese, aged beyond purpose, existing simply because it was never told to stop. You sit on a low crate and exhale. The mushrooms, the heists, the maps, the myths. It's all so impossibly rich, like a cheese board assembled by history itself. And somewhere above, the city keeps ticking. Buses wheeze, cafe doors swing open, lovers argue over espresso. But none of that matters down here. Down here, the mold has the final word. The passage ahead narrows into shadow again, and you follow without question now, like you've handed your senses over to the walls themselves. You've seen the official aging chambers. You've wandered through mushroom farms, resistance vaults, outlaw cheese bunkers. But now you're chasing whispers. The air feels denser here, not because it's stale, far from it, but because it's secretive, heavy with things no one wants to explain. The stone under your feet is smoother, worn down by years of boots and rolling carts, and who knows what else. You turn a corner, and that's when you see it. A door, iron, unmarked. It looks like it hasn't been opened in years, but it's unlocked. You push gently, and it swings open on silent hinges, revealing a room dimly lit by a single orange bulb swinging from the ceiling like a nervous thought. Inside is a map, not framed, Not printed, hand-drawn, pinned to the wall with rusted nails and scrawled over in multiple inks, styles, and languages. It's a cheese map, not of France, not of regions, not even of varietals. This is a map of active cheese caves beneath Paris, not the legal ones, not the polished, stainless steel storage units, the real ones, the hidden ones, the ones under hotels and bookstores and anonymous apartment basements. You move closer. Each cave is marked with symbols, some familiar, some strange. A star for a Comte tunnel under Rue Mouffetard, a crescent moon for an illegal bleu beneath Montparnasse, a question mark labeled Lost Brie somewhere near Pigalle. One corner is smudged completely out, like someone tried to erase it by hand. Or maybe they just didn't want anyone going there. Pinned next to the map is a folded index card that simply reads, "Do not share, not even with other affineurs." And here comes the fun part. You start recognizing places, the metro stations you've used, the cafes you've eaten at, the parks where you've sat and watched pigeons argue over baguette crumbs. All of them sitting above this secret, moldy metropolis. You pass into the next room. It's round, almost domed, like a chapel. Wooden shelves line the circular walls, and in the center stands a single table. On it, a stack of notebooks, a block of chalk, and an open cheese wrapped in wax paper, still warm. Someone was here. Maybe still is. You sit slowly and pick up the top notebook. Its pages are filled with tasting notes, cave temperatures, humidity logs, exact, obsessive, affectionate. But scattered between the data are stories, rumors, names of people who guard particular cheeses like family heirlooms, and then you find it. The story that everyone whispers, but no one confirms. The affineur fantôme, the phantom affineur. According to legend, there's a person, maybe a group, who roams the unmapped tunnels beneath Paris, tending to cheeses no one knows about. They don't sell them. They don't label them. They just age them. Perfectly, religiously, without ever being seen. They're said to have saved ancient starter cultures, rescued outlaw wheels from destruction, even snuck cheese into state dinners without anyone noticing. One margin reads, 3:15 a.m. phantom song, heard near Rue de Rivoli, smelled of mimolette. You laugh under your breath. It's absurd, and yet, part of you wants it to be true. Here's your quirky tidbit. There's an entire subculture of urban explorers who seek out underground cheese caves for sport. They call themselves les moisiques, a play on moisissure, mold, and mystique. They don't break in. They fall through. At least, that's how they explain it when caught. Their motto, la moisissure est la mémoire. Mold is memory. You leave the circular room and find another corridor that seems to be built through what used to be a wine cellar. Dusty bottles still sit in stone alcoves, some broken, some so faded the labels are unreadable. A few have been replaced by small wheels of cheese tucked into the curves like sleeping mice. Suddenly you hear something. Not footsteps, not voices. A sniff, then another. You pause, wait. It happens again. An exaggerated, practiced sniff, followed by a thoughtful hum. You peek around the corner, and there, half hidden behind a crate, is a person. Late 60s, maybe 70s, wearing a headlamp, long wool coat, fingerless gloves. Their nose is nearly touching a wheel of Saint Nectaire. They sniff, nod, scribble something in a notebook. You freeze. They look up, make eye contact with you, smile, say nothing. Then they turn, lift the wheel carefully, and vanish into a side tunnel, like a ghost made of old denim and rind. Did you just meet the phantom affineur? Probably not. Probably. You'll never know. Scientists still argue about whether these legends are rooted in real history or simply romanticized folklore. But urban explorers claim to have found wheels wrapped in newspaper from the 1950s. Others report caves where no one has entered for decades, yet the cheese is still rotated weekly. You follow the tunnel a little longer, half expecting another encounter. But there's only stillness now, and that lingering scent of Saint-Nectaire. You stop at a T-junction. 2 paths. One leads up. The other curls back into darkness. You choose darkness, of course, because you're not quite ready to leave the map behind. Not yet. You take the darker path. The one that looks like it was carved out with little more than a spoon and some determination. Your boots crunch softly over loose stone, and for a while there's nothing but your breath and the faint squeak of your footfalls. The air grows cooler, sharper. Your flashlight flickers once, dramatically, as flashlights always do when tension is building, before steadying again. This part of the caves feels older, less touched, more mythical. You find yourself in a small chamber with arched ceilings and walls coated in lichen, so fine it looks like powdered sugar. The only sound is the drip, drip, drip of condensation hitting stone. Except, no, wait. There's something else. Laughter. Soft. Muffled. You pause, lean toward the noise. It's coming from a narrow crevice on your left. And because you've clearly stopped making sensible decisions hours ago, you slip through. And suddenly, you're in another room. But this one is alive. People. Candles. A long wooden table, covered in cheeses, breads, and mismatched wine bottles. The air buzzes with the hum of quiet conversation, soft laughter, and the occasional clink of cutlery against plate. You found the thing you weren't supposed to believe in. The mold tour. Not the official kind. Not the glossy brochure kind. This is the underground. Locals, cataphiles, off-duty affineurs, and the cheese-obsessed, all gathered for what can only be described as a tasting ritual crossed with a seance. At the head of the table sits an elderly woman with a flashlight clipped to a beret and a Saint-Félicien in her lap like a sleeping cat. She's mid-monologue about the virtues of triple cream, gesturing animatedly with a cheese knife. You sit quietly at the edge, unsure if anyone even sees you. They do, but they don't mind. Someone slides a wooden platter your way. On it, slivers of orange-rinded longraise, a cube of cheese so runny it's practically a threat, and a small piece of something gray-green and suspiciously alive-looking. You hesitate. A whisper from beside you. Eat that one last. It's the test. You take a bite of the longraise first. It hits like a dream. Tangy, rich, slightly boozy from the champagne it was washed in. The next cheese is creamy to the point of indecency. You swallow and feel your eyes widen involuntarily. Then the test cheese. You poke it gently. It resists. You lift it. It wiggles. You sniff it. Your nose gently threatens to resign. And then you taste it. It's smoky, spicy, faintly metallic, like if a goat had a bad idea and then made it work. Your tongue goes on a brief vacation. Your brain follows. You're not sure you passed the test, but the woman at the head of the table raises her glass and nods. You're in. Someone leans over and asks, "Have you met the blind affineur?" You blink. "The what?" They nod. He can name any cheese by scent alone. Says it's like hearing a dialect. You laugh, thinking they're joking. They're not. Later, 10, maybe 20 minutes, or was it hours? You're led to a side alcove where a man sits on a stool beside several wrapped cheeses. Late 50s, white beard, sunglasses. He's peeling wax paper from a Saint Marcellin and holding it near his face. He inhales once, then again, then speaks. August milk, second cut, young cows, southeast-facing pasture, affineur, nervous. Everyone nods like this is completely normal. Scientists still argue about whether scent memory can be trained to this degree. Some say yes, it's all about neural mapping and repetition. Others say the man's making it up. But the cheeses keep proving him right. You ask about the cave itself. Who owns it? How did they find it? A shrug. It finds you. Classic. Here's your quirky tidbit. There's a cheese club in Paris with no address. Only a phone number. You call, leave a voicemail, and if you're accepted, someone meets you at a metro stop and blindfolds you. What happens next is dinner. Possibly enlightenment. Definitely indigestion. Back in the main chamber, the tasting continues. Someone plays an accordion badly, but enthusiastically. Someone else has lit a candle inside a hollowed-out cheese rind. You lose track of time. One wall of the room is covered in graffiti. Not tagging, inscriptions. Messages left by previous guests. Some are poetic, some are ridiculous. Some are just names and dates. You spot one near the top. Cheese is time you can taste. Beneath it, someone added, and time is mold you can't reverse. You sit again. The people around you chatter softly, sipping wine and telling stories. Someone passes around slices of bread baked with bits of blue cheese crust baked right in. Someone else offers a hard candy that turns out to be made entirely of dehydrated chèvre. Bold. The woman in the beret toasts to the cult of the cave, and everyone raises their glass. You do too. Why not? This isn't just cheese. It's culture. It's history. It's resistance. And here, in this forgotten space beneath the city, it feels almost sacred. Scientists still argue about whether cheese can ever be spiritual. But the people here don't care. They already know. Eventually, the candles burn low. The accordion player nods off. The crowd begins to thin. You stand to leave, full of flavors and facts and maybe a little hallucinated mold joy. As you exit, someone presses a small piece of paper into your hand. You open it. It's another map. No instructions, just symbols, and one word. Continue. You fold the map and tuck it into your pocket without thinking, like it's a key you won't understand until the door is already open. The corridor ahead is narrower again, the walls closer, but your steps are steady now. This isn't wandering, it's following. The smell is different here too. Not just cheese anymore. Dust, rust, wet stone, and something sharp and unfamiliar. You round a corner, and there it is. Cracked stone. A jagged split running down the center of the ceiling. Rubble scattered across the floor. A single caution sign lies flat, half covered in limestone dust. You found what officials refer to as Zone Inconnue, an area of the cave system deemed unstable and not recommended for entry. which naturally means you enter immediately. The collapse is partial. A single tunnel caved in years ago, but others wind off in new directions. Through one of these, you find a strange hybrid of history and urgency. Abandoned metal supports, cheese racks tipped over and left to rot, mold blooming unchecked across every surface like forgotten lace. This isn't a museum, it's a battleground. And what's being fought for? The future of the caves. You pass a spray-painted slogan across one wall, Le fond est fort. The foundation is strong, not just poetic, also wrong, because the ground here isn't stable. In 2017, a section of Rue d'Alacia cracked open due to a subsurface tunnel collapse, forcing evacuations and reigniting a very old argument. Should the cheese caves be preserved, protected, or shut down? You enter another room, this one brighter, thanks to a few modern LED strips wired awkwardly into the ceiling. There's a table with blueprints spread out, real ones this time, city maps, geological scans, cave charts, and sticky notes with phrases like Private Operator 2026 and Hydrostatic Instability, Cancel Tender. You've wandered into a planning zone. This is where bureaucrats and engineers argue in chalk and ink and expired permits. You skim through a loose binder and find pages marked Projected Consolidation, Water Ingress Mitigation, and Cultural Risk Assessment. Translation: they're deciding what lives and what gets buried. Here's your mainstream fact. Over 70% of the Paris underground remains undocumented or restricted. The government maintains a Special Inspection des Carrières, an agency that patrols, monitors, and seals off unstable sections. But every few years, another part of the city sags, and the question arises again: how much heritage is worth preserving? One page in the binder is dated just months ago. A handwritten note reads, Roquefort, aging cave request, denied, insufficient structural guarantee, suggest relocation. You can almost hear the affineurs howling from here. Because relocating a cheese cave isn't like moving office furniture. The microbes don't travel politely. They cling to stone, to air currents, to invisible histories etched into the pores of old limestone. Move the cheese, and you leave its spirit behind. Scientists still argue whether microbial terroir is a myth or a measurable truth. Some claim you can mimic a cave's conditions in a lab. Others insist that no technology can replace centuries of fungal buildup and sweat-seasoned shelves. You wander deeper, past crates marked with red X's, condemned batches, perhaps spoiled, perhaps simply stranded when the tunnel was sealed. Some have split open, revealing cheese so dried and cracked it resembles ancient pottery. One in the corner still pulses faintly with humidity. Its rind moves slightly when you exhale near it, as if acknowledging your presence. Creepy? Absolutely. Alive? Possibly. You stumble into a hallway lined with photographs. Black and white, sepia, even a few faded color prints taped lovingly to the wall. People, workers, affineurs, smiling beside shelves of cheese, holding up brie like trophies, posing in boots and aprons, arms dusted in salt and flour. This isn't nostalgia, it's protest. A reminder that the caves aren't just mold and stone, they're labor, memory, identity. Beneath one photo of a bearded man flipping a wheel of Morbier is a handwritten caption. He died before they bulldozed the entrance. We still age one wheel in his name. You sit down on a crate, just for a minute, and that's when you notice the plaque. Small, brass, bolted into the stone. To the affineurs who stayed, to the caves that listened, to the mold that remembered. It doesn't matter who put it there, someone did. Someone who understood that this place is more than a storage unit. It's a living archive. A diary written in salt and time and bacterial bloom. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some activists have taken to planting cheeses in sealed sections of the cave. Small wheels tucked behind bricks or hidden in rubble like moldy time capsules. They hope one day someone will reopen the tunnels and find them, taste them, understand what they meant. You pick up one last folder before moving on. Inside is a letter, never sent, addressed to the city council. Don't fill these caves with concrete. Fill them with stories. Let the cheese breathe. Let the walls talk. Let future generations inherit something that stinks gloriously of defiance. You fold the letter and place it back where you found it. The caves may collapse. The maps may fade. The government may patch it all over and forget. But you won't. Because now, you know. You leave the protest wall behind. Feeling like you've just stepped out of a monument no one above remembers exists. Your feet crunch over bits of crumbled stone, and for the first time tonight, you don't check your map. You just follow. The tunnel narrows, then opens again into a grand chamber, unlike any you've seen so far. Tall arches carved directly into the limestone lift the ceiling higher than anything else underground. Your flashlight catches the dust swirling in the air, like soft snow in slow motion. This place feels sacred, not in a religious way exactly, but there's a reverence here. Rows upon rows of cheese shelves stretch in long curves like pews in a cathedral. And at the center, no altar, no statue, just one enormous wheel of mimolette. So large, it looks like it would take 6 people to lift it. You've reached what the few who know about it call La Cathédrale du Fromage, the cheese cathedral. No signs mark its entry. No guardrails keep tourists away. It isn't on any tour, any pamphlet, or even most cataphile maps. It's a whispered legend, a place affineurs visit in secret, maybe once in a lifetime, and only when the time and the cheese is right. You take a few slow steps forward, your boots making no sound on the cool floor. The mimolette glows faintly in the lamplight, a deep amber orb dimpled with craters from the cheese mites that have sculpted its surface over the years. Yes, cheese mites. Tiny, microscopic bugs that nibble at the rind, helping age certain wheels and giving mimolette its signature texture. A little horrifying? Sure, but also kind of beautiful. Life-giving life. Here's your mainstream fact. Mimolette was once banned in the United States due to mite contamination, despite being considered a delicacy in France. The ban was lifted only after considerable culinary outrage and an embarrassingly thorough set of customs inspections. Scientists still argue about the role of mites. Are they essential for rind formation, or just tolerated as long as the cheese tastes good? Some labs even try to breed gentle mites with less aggressive appetites. Others say that defeats the entire point. Mites are the sculptors, the rough hands that give mimolette its soul. You circle the wheel, reverently. It's not for eating, not anymore. This cheese is a relic, a symbol, a declaration of patient artistry. Beside it lies a wooden stool, worn smooth by decades of quiet visitors. You sit. No one else is here, no voices, no footsteps. Just the distant drip of water and the soft hiss of air through limestone vents. Around you, dozens of wheels rest silently on arched wooden shelves. Comte, Salers, Thoma, Morbier. Some so old their rinds have fossilized, their labels faded into oblivion. One bears a tiny plaque. 1892, never sold, never moved. And just behind it, a wheel with a bite taken out. Not a clean cut, not a wedge. A single round human bite. No note, no explanation. Just the audacity of someone who couldn't help themselves. You laugh softly, because of course. Of course someone did that. Here's your quirky tidbit. In 2001, a famous affineur staged a cheese communion in a hidden cave outside Lyon. Guests dressed in robes. Gregorian chants played over a speaker. Everyone received a piece of 12-year-aged tome by candlelight. The event was rated, but not before at least 3 people swore they saw the cheese glow. You look around. The light is fading now. The battery on your torch wheezing its last breaths. But you don't panic. You let it fade. Because this place doesn't need artificial light. It's already full of stories. Scientists still argue about the psychological effects of being in a space like this. Is the peace real, or just a trick of silence and smell? Does the weight of history actually settle on your chest, or is it just the low oxygen making you feel contemplative? Does it matter? Because in this moment, as your eyes adjust to the cave's gentle darkness, you feel it, that slow, thick sense of timelessness, as if the limestone has pulled you into its memory, as if you too are fermenting gently into something richer. You lie down on the stone beside the mimolette wheel, using your coat as a makeshift pillow. The air is perfectly still. You hear nothing now except the soft sound of your own breath, echoing back from the ancient stone. You close your eyes, and the cheese dreams with you. Sleep wraps around you like a rind, thick, comforting, protective. The air cools, the smells mellow, and the last faint flickers of candlelight, laughter, and fermenting memory fade gently into the distance. You're still deep beneath Paris, but it feels different now. Quieter, safer. The kind of quiet that holds no tension, just warmth. You imagine the mimolette wheel still watching over you, its craters soft with time, its mites long retired. Around you, the cheeses continue their slow, sacred dance of transformation, breathing and aging in their cathedral of calm. There's no rush down here, no deadlines, no noise, just patience. The walls hum with silence, old and kind. Every drop of water, every thread of mold, every shifting scent reminds you change doesn't need to shout. It can happen softly, silently, while you rest. Above you, Paris moves on. But here, in this quiet, hidden world, nothing is asked of you. You don't have to remember facts or understand microbes or identify obscure cheeses by smell. You just have to breathe. Let go. Let yourself settle, like milk becoming curd, like curd becoming cheese, like cheese becoming history. So rest easy. Let your thoughts drip like water through limestone. Let your limbs sink like old wheels into wooden shelves. Let your dreams fill with quiet tunnels, warm lights, and the sweet, strange comfort of a world that never hurries. You're safe now. The cheese will keep watch. Sweet dreams.